Hi there. Welcome. I'm Julie Pham, joined here by Lizzie Mintus.
Hi.
Oh, yes, we'd love to see where you are from. If you could just put into the LinkedIn comments, just say where you're from. I see someone saying hello from Seattle. And Taylor, I've read your comments. So excited. This helped me so much. Had the golden rule ingrained in me. Yes, I think of it as there's the rubber band rule. But that's how we think about it in terms of the 7 forms of respect. That respect is flexible. So welcome. Yes, if you could just, as you are coming in, please say where you are coming in from. This is actually our very first time doing LinkedIn Live. So we're learning with you live right now. Okay, from Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, wow. That's great. Um, oh, yeah, seeing people come in. I think Paulina's on your team, right, Lizzie?
Hi, Paulina. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Oh, welcome. So this is so great to see people. So I am Dr. Julie Pham, and I'm the CEO and founder of CuriosityBased and the author of the best-selling new book, The 7 Forms of Respect: A Guide to Transforming Your Communications and Relationships at Work. And I am joined today by Lizzie Mintus, who is the CEO and founder of Here's Waldo Recruiting. And so as people are coming in, I just want to tell you a little bit about the occasion of why we're doing this. So actually earlier this week, we launched our digital course on the 7 forms of respect. And at CuriosityBased, we believe in accommodating different learning styles. And we know that while I've got this book, some people don't like to read. Some people do not like to read. They're like, no, just give me videos. And so that's what this course is about. We've got videos and transcripts and workbooks for people to do it at their own pace. And I invited Lizzie because she and her team were actually one of the first people to take that digital course. And so there is more information in the chat about that course. And we're actually running a special promotion right now where you can get up to $100 off of that $150 course. Now, there are limited spots, so the earlier you buy, the more you save. Oh, I see people coming in from North Carolina and from North Las Vegas and Lake Stevens. Thank you. Welcome. So, and also later on today, I'm going to be holding a live version, interactive live version on Zoom of the 7 Forms of Respect crash course. And this is going to be free of charge. This is to celebrate our new digital course, and information can be found in the chat. I actually rarely do live sessions like this for that are open to the public, and so this is a special one-time event. So with that, oh, I love seeing people. Yes, thank you for loving for 7 forms of respect. That's so great. So I want to introduce and actually explain a bit why I invited Lizzie here. First of all, I am in awe of Lizzie Mintus. I think that she is such a boss lady and an entrepreneur who I find really inspirational. She started Here's Waldo in the middle of the pandemic in June 2020 when we met. I think you had 1 employee, and now you're up to 15 employees and up to 7 figures in revenue, and also nationwide. And we've just been a source of support for one another. And Lizzie has been a big supporter of the 7 forms of respect. And that's why I wanted to invite her in this conversation. And so today we're going to really be talking about entrepreneurship, about recruitment and company culture, and also the 7 forms of respect. So Lizzie, can you also just share a bit more about yourself and Here's Waldo?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So Here's Waldo is a technical recruitment firm. We're based in the Seattle area, but we have candidates and clients throughout the Americas. And we are focused on quality over quantity. So getting to know our candidates and what they're looking for, and presenting a handpicked batch to the companies that we support. So we get to know everybody and figure out kind of what their true alignment is. We are focused on the video game industry right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lizzie. And Lizzie will also be sharing a bit more about why she started her company in a little bit. So Lizzie and I actually met through something called Project Ascendant, is a program for female entrepreneurs that was started by Christy Johnson. And so I just wanted to ask Lizzie, to start off, why did you decide to join that program?
Yeah, the program came at the perfect time. It was the start of the pandemic, and I had already launched my company, but I hadn't really thought through why I was doing what I was doing. And kind of the hardest things in business are to figure out, what is your mission, what are your values, what is your plan for the next 3 months, 6 months, and on. And who are you targeting, and what do you want to be? Because you can't be everything to everybody. And there were so many smart women in the program, so many people that I admired and I was interested in learning from and seeing what I could offer to them as well, just a support group. How about you, Julie?
Well, I remember talking to Christy about it in maybe January, February, just as I just launched my own business. And she was telling me about it. And I realized I wanted to be part of a cohort. I wanted to be part of a group of women, because starting a business, it can be really lonely. And so, and I wanted uh, accountability. And I also wanted people who would also understand the challenges, the particular challenges of being a new entrepreneur. And that is, I mean, that's what I got. It's been such a support group, such a wonderful network. I mean, aside from meeting Lizzie, I also got to meet other really great women who have been huge supporters and advocates for my business and for my work. So huge. And also for anyone who's considering becoming an entrepreneur, and I really suggest you join a group like this. There are lots of different groups, and Lizzie, I know that you also belong to some other entrepreneurship groups as well. And it's just having that space to talk about the challenges of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's essential.
Mm-hmm. So, Lizzie, what was it like to start your business in the middle of the pandemic?
It was interesting. It was really scary to get started. I found out that I was pregnant in February of 2020. So we had just moved. There was this pandemic thing. We were washing our groceries. It was just a really uncertain time in the world. But that kind of gave me pause, along with starting to work from home and everybody's world just turning upside down. It just made me think about what I really wanted to do. And I worked for a recruiting agency for 4 years before, and I learned so much. But I really wanted to focus on quality over quantity. That was my big focus. And the company I was working for was pretty strict about working 8 to 5 in an office. And I knew that was not going to really work out for me being a new mom. I needed a lot of flexibility. So I wanted to create a company where I could take the time to get to know my candidates. I could get to take the time to know my clients and figure out what they're really about, kind of just slow down and add some humanity to the process. People aren't just numbers. Everyone has an individual need. So I really wanted to focus on that. And then that eventually, that started with just me, but really kind of snowballed into being able to offer that to my employees, and grow the business that way.
So was it really hard to make that decision? Did you angst over it, or was it just kind of
Yes.
came to you and you're like, yes, this is what I must do?
I had been thinking about it, but I think the pandemic really pushed me into action. I had so much anxiety and I wasn't sure what I was doing. And the women's group was just perfect to get to know people and ask them basic things like, how do you set up payroll? Like all the really
Mhm.
beginning logistics of starting a business. How about your experience starting through the pandemic, Julie?
I don't think I would have started my business if not for the pandemic. So, because I decided that I was going to start my business around the time you started yours. So it was the summer of 2020 where I was just, okay, I think that I actually think that I want to branch off on my own. And I had the best job ever. And the only reason why I'd leave the best job ever is so that I could actually start my own company. And the pandemic made me realize that I didn't need to have an office.
Yeah.
And so as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, it's really scary to have to pay rent. That's a fixed cost, and knowing that I would have to raise enough revenue every month to do that. And so the fact that we're able to not only work remotely, because the team is working remotely, and also that, I mean, what CuriosityBased does, doing all of this organizational development and facilitation, that we could do that virtually, and that it was no longer this poor cousin of live. It was actually what people needed to do. And so the pandemic actually made it possible for me to start my business. I honestly don't know if I would have done it as early if not for being pushed into the remote world and seeing that it was possible.
Yeah. I thought a
Yeah.
lot about always regretting too. I mean, it's always something I'd wanted to do. And at the end of the day, you could always work somewhere else if it doesn't work out. So I think that's a huge push. And remote changed everything. So
Yeah, it really did. And then also, I mean, what you were describing about, you wanted this culture for yourself, and then you also created it for others. And so, and that was also the case for me too. It's just like, what kind of, what do I need for myself? And then also, and bringing along other people who are just, yeah, this is the kind of culture that we want to have.
and
So
flexibility, I think, is huge too. Flexibility changed for all companies. I mean, flexible work hours. Do you need to work from 8 to 5? Some jobs maybe, but if you want to take 2 hours off in the day and finish up in the night, it's okay, right? As long as you're getting your work done in a remote environment. So
yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that I got from my first year of business is the difference of managing my time when I was an employee to managing my energy
yeah.
as an entrepreneur. And so I think a lot more about that. I mean, you must too, because you've also are juggling lots of other things in your life too.
Definitely, yeah. You really opened my eyes to thinking about what do I love doing and I could do all day, and what do I not like doing and it's really taking my energy away. So that's a
Mhm.
great thing you've taught me.
Yeah. And so Lizzie and I have also just been sources of support and also peer coaching for one another. And that's something that I discovered during the pandemic too. I mean, we're not able to meet in person because actually Lizzie and I have never met in person. And
Maybe soon.
and yet we still have this a strong sense of support for one another. And actually, Lizzie, it was actually you who initiated what I now call and think of as peer coaching. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I wanted to reach out to you because you seemed so thoughtful and full of knowledge, and just hear about your journey. And I think a huge takeaway from this group too is just learning that all businesses share similar problems. And my business is different from Julie's entirely, but we have a lot of parallels. And I think it's so interesting to just have experience shares from other people. What are you going through? How are you thinking about this? So I reached out to Julie, and I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help her. And she helped me so much to begin with. But just through experiences and, hey, have you thought about this? Just having someone to kind of challenge your ideas was so important. How about you, Julie?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, I remember when you reached out to me, and first of all, you're the first person in the group to reach out. And I was like, oh, she's doing the thing that Christy Johnson told us to do. We're actually
Listen
connecting
to
because,
Christy.
right, because we got this spreadsheet with everyone's information. And Lizzie, you were the very first person to reach out. And I just really appreciated kind of the straightforward way that you did it. And it also reminded me when I was giving you advice on marketing, I was like, oh, I do know stuff. Because sometimes as an entrepreneur, there's so many things we don't know. And so to be able to give someone advice, it's like, oh, I do know stuff. And then to also to be able to hear it from another perspective was also really valuable. And so, I mean, Lizzie, you actually inspired me, because after that, I then went through and contacted a bunch of other people in the program and said, hey, do you want to set up an hour and you get half that time and I get half that time for us to discuss whatever we want. And it's just been really, it's been really helpful just to also be that straightforward about it too. There's no beating around the bush. It's like, hey, we're both creating something here. So what would you like to do with your half hour? And what I ended up doing with my time from people was actually getting feedback on the 7 forms of respect assessment tool. So Lizzie, you were one of the users, and I got to watch you interact with the assessment tool. And yeah, I used it for user research actually. And so encouraging the people online, if you're thinking about, if you're actually an entrepreneur right now, finding people who you can do peer coaching with. It's not always about just mentoring or getting a mentor. Actually, I think that some of the most valuable conversations I have are just regular peer coaching sessions with people.
Kind of an accountability item, because when you're working for somebody else, you have someone telling you what to do, setting the schedule, setting your goals. But when you work for yourself, you are responsible for that. And you're also responsible for being accountable to yourself. But it's so nice to have other people and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'd like for you to check in next month and remind me on this thing. And it's also amazing to just talk to all kinds of people. I would not be here today if I was not in this program. If we didn't reach out and connect, maybe we wouldn't be here. So I think it's so important to just talk to people, talk to as many people as you can, even if there's not maybe a direct, thing that you're going to get, just to hear their perspectives, or maybe they'll introduce you to someone. You just never know where a conversation is going to take you. So
Yeah, I think
talk to
definitely
as many
asking for
people.
help. Asking for help.
Ask
Asking for help is just really huge as an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah.
So we've spent the first part about just talking about entrepreneurship, and also, by the way, if you have questions, you can put them into the comment. What's going to happen is now we're going to talk about company culture and recruiting, and we will open up things to question Q&A at the end. So if you have a question right now about entrepreneurship, please put it into the comments, and because we will be gathering that and addressing that in a bit. So Lizzie, let's switching to recruiting. This is your world. So you introduced us to Here's Waldo earlier, and everyone, I know you do technical recruiting and gaming recruiting, but like everyone has to recruit people. So what is that current state of recruitment?
Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting time. The market is really competitive. We've heard about staffing shortages, and we've seen staffing shortages. If you've gone out to eat, if you've tried to get anything done, it's hard. Where did all these people go? So every company is still really looking to hire. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty about the state of the world. We're in interesting times. We're maybe in a recession or going into recession. So people have some concerns about that. But people will always be changing jobs. I think the best thing that has come from the pandemic is that the candidate, if you're a job seeker, you're in the driver's seat. You have a lot of options, and you can work for so many companies. Maybe you move somewhere totally remote that you'd have 2 companies to choose from. Now you have unlimited companies. You could work for an international company because so much is remote. And I think companies really have to be more considerate about what employees want, which I'm a huge fan of, and recognizing maybe people care about remote work. Companies used to say, hey, I have pool tables and beer in my office. We're a great company to work for, but none of that stuff matters anymore. Your swanky office doesn't matter. It's how you treat your employees, what you offer them, like from a holistic perspective, is really important. So I think it's totally shifted.
So it sounds like it's that job seekers market.
Yes.
Like they're in the driver's seat. And so with that, then how are companies shifting now that it's not about their swanky offices? Like how are they talking more to the candidates? Like what is it?
I think that they're spending more time thinking about what they want, and maybe being more open-minded, because before you just need this person in this vicinity to be in this office. But if it's remote, it opens the door, and then people have options. So maybe you're going to have to look as an employer into areas you didn't look before. Maybe that's being more open-minded to different diversity candidates, finding people whose values align, that maybe need to work a little bit. They're not 10 out of 10 on the skills, but they're really motivated and they're hungry, things like that. So I think employers have to find creative solutions to finding the people that they need, or maybe reevaluating who they need.
So it sounds like actually the challenges are just forcing companies to think differently.
Yeah. And I think people in a recession, you might have a lot of applicants, but in a strong economy, you're not going to have applicants for certain roles. Everybody is employed. So you have to think about how you're going to attract them and what will attract them. And it's more thoughtful.
I've heard now that with the everyone's talking about, okay, a recession is headed this way. And so the big companies, there are lots of hiring freezes, and yet this might be good for small companies. Are you seeing that? Like, because it loosens it up a bit more?
I think any company that is diligent in their hiring process and still open to hiring is in a good place if you can hire quickly and have those attractive qualities. I think with the market uncertainty, you might get laid off from a big company. I think stability is, what is stability, right? Any company could lay you off at any time. But some people are maybe being more thoughtful about the places they want to work. How much cash in the bank do they have? How much money have they raised? That's kind of changed a little bit. But yeah, smaller companies that can have a more agile hiring process are ahead of the big companies that take months and months and might lose out.
So what are some recruiting mistakes that you see that companies make and that do you have to go in and correct for? Or like, I mean, and when
Yes.
do people bring you in,
People
versus
bring
doing it
me in.
in-house?
Yeah, when maybe they don't have a recruiter, or they want to scale, they want to add 200 people, they want to build out a whole new company, or they need help hiring a strategic leader, and they really need somebody to go out, raise brand awareness about what they're doing. That's a huge part about what we do, because maybe nobody's heard about your studio, but we reach out to a couple hundred people. It kind of spreads the word. So if you need somebody to be proactive in your search, and I'm very open with companies about what they're looking for, because that's who I am as a person. But I think it's really important, if you have an unrealistic expectation, if you want to hire somebody and you're just way under market, or you expect that this person will be in the office, but there's only 100 of these people in the US, we need to have that conversation from the beginning. I think it's really important that companies have the time to properly evaluate a candidate, but you also need to make sure you're keeping the candidate engaged, because people have options now. And so your process is kind of a reflection of who you are as a company, right? Can you get things done? Is it fast? Is it efficient? And I mean, bigger companies have more pieces in play and, sign-offs that they need to go through. So it can be a bit longer, but I think a big mistake would be just taking too long and then thinking as a company that you have maybe so many options, or that you need to see so many options before making a decision. There's always a joke. The recruiter has spent time, you've looked at 2,000 profiles, you've reached out to 250 people, you screened 10, 2 make it, 1 makes it to the final, and then the hiring manager says, but I want to see other candidates. But you've screened all the other candidates, so just being clear about, here's the talent pool, here's what's out there, here's what the market is, and just, I think communication is key.
Yeah, I've actually heard people complain about the lack of communication from recruiters or just from that recruitment process. Like, oh, I got ghosted. They never got back to me.
Yes, we will not ghost you. I think it's really important. And a lot of people maybe don't want to have the hard conversation, but I think it's important to say, hey, unfortunately, the company is going to pass on you. And if there's feedback, here's why. I mean, if it's constructive feedback, they think that you could work on XYZ skill. I think that's the most important thing to know. And I can't believe that people ghost. I cannot believe that that is a thing in the professional world. So
Yeah, I mean, I hear so many complaints about it, and I see some questions in the comments, and we are going to get to them in a little bit. So, because we want also for them to be big, and so that everyone can read them as well. So, thank you, Jackie. I see your question there. Let's moving on to company culture. I know that you pride yourself in finding the right culture fit for your clients. So, how do you do that? How do you help? Yeah, how do you do that?
I think you just have to ask the hard questions. I always joke with candidates that I'm just going to ask a lot of really uncomfortable personal questions to them right away. I mean, it's good to get that out there, because that is what I'm going to do. So I just want to cover all the logistics and kind of get to know them and get to know their values, and take some time to talk to the company. I mean, looking at a job description, you can see all the skills, right? But what is the company missing? What is the hiring manager? What kind of person are they? What do they need? And what do they think they need, I guess? And really understanding, to take away your preconceived notions of what you think the company might need, and really listen to them and what they're saying, and, holistically what they need.
So, Lizzie, what are some example questions that you asked to find out about their culture?
How would you describe your company culture? What are your company core values are huge. So I can understand what it is you're going to screen for. I mean, what are the most important underlying fundamentals? And then what are your expectations of this person? Because some companies expect somebody to put in their headphones, sit at their desk, and maybe program the whole day, right? There's not going to be a lot of interaction. So taking into account, is it a company that really needs someone to provide X job? Or is it a startup that needs someone, T-shaped is a good term. So we're hiring you for this, but you also have these skills that you can provide. So just understanding that from the company and from the candidate.
Yes. I know one of the things that we think about in terms of the 7 forms of respect framework is that culture, yes, there's your values, and it's also what you do. It's the
Yeah.
behaviors, it's the actions. And oftentimes at a company, people follow what the leader does, not what they say they do, but what they do. And so it could be useful to then to find out as a job seeker, hey, what are the behaviors? What are is multitasking acceptable here? Is that something, or is there lots of email? Is there an expectation to give lots of compliments? I mean, there's just those are actually different forms of respect that can help people understand, well, what is the company culture like? I mean, I remember when I worked at my first big tech company, there was so much what we call candor. So lots of constructive feedback, a lot of unsolicited constructive feedback, to the point where it could feel mean, like people were just being jerks. Lots of information. Everyone was CC'd on these email chains. There's so much information. And there was very low in terms of attention. People multitasked all the time, and there was very low in terms of punctuality, and people were like triple booked meetings, and no one could ever be on time just because of the structure of it. So to be able to describe a company in that way too, just through their forms of respect, is something that we think that job seekers can also, and also companies can also align on.
Yeah.
So
And being able to have the honest conversation, I think, is really important when it doesn't align. Being able to say, as much as I'd love to share your resume, this is not right, and here's why. And just seeing what people say. I think people ghost or kind of go into avoidance mode instead of have those conversations. But those conversations are so important.
mhm. So now we are going to move into just talking about the 7 forms of respect, because here's Waldo is actually one of the first users of it. So because Lizzie, last year you took one of our early workshops, and then you also this is talk about support. I was like, Lizzie, could you get your company to go through the digital course? And you said yes. And so all of the members of your company went through the online course. And so I just want to we've talked about the importance of being able to articulate company culture. So how can the 7 forms of respect help companies articulate their culture?
I think it's going to help you understand why. Why do you come from this place, and really think about who you are, which takes some self-reflection, right? Who are the leaders, and what are their attributes, and why are they that way? And I think once you understand that about yourself, and you kind of go through a self-discovery journey about your respect, then you can articulate that to others, and you can say, this is the way I am, and here's why, and here's the best way to kind of work together. So I think it's a self-discovery journey.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the things that we try to stress with the framework is it's not just about the what, it's
about the
about the next
why.
step is about the why,
Yeah.
because people could actually have the same what, but have different whys, have different
Yeah,
reasons for that.
definitely. And I think the why it just helps normalize and humanize the whole process. I am this way because of this from my upbringing, or because this from my past job. And once you realize it, it just diffuses it. And you might be offended initially, but then when you find out, okay, here's the why, it's hard to be upset.
Mhm.
Harder.
Yeah. I mean, once you just understand, like, that understanding, because otherwise we are making up people's whys. Sometimes
Yeah.
we'll do that too,
And
come
that's
up with a reason.
dangerous.
Yeah. So, how do you think that the 7 forms of respect could also help with, say, the onboarding process?
Yeah, I think that it's really, um, once you have a better idea of why somebody is the way that they are, and what their expectations are around communication, and what they feel is respectful and what is not, then you know how to work with your employee and how to set your employee up for success. Maybe being on time is really important to them, but it's not to you. Maybe then you'll realize, hey, I need to show up on time for this person's meetings. It kind of just helps with all the little things that go into building a great culture. It helps with understanding have mutual understanding, I guess.
Mhm. So, thank you, Lizzie. So, Now, so your team went through the digital course. What was the experience like?
Yeah, I loved the digital course because going back to flexibility, I think offering people flexibility is so important, especially in the modern age. People have different obligations throughout the day with their family, with their kids, with their health. And so giving people the digital course enabled them to do it as much as they wanted, or on the time frame that they wanted, which is great for the modern day world. And then we met and shared the ways in which we like to be respected. We all went through that we like to show respect and we expect respect to be given to us. And then we explain the why. And I think the why is so huge because it just helps you understand maybe your team's background, how they were raised, what kind of culture they come from, and why they are the way that they are. And once you understand why people are the way that they are, it just makes it so much easier to work with one another and build a deeper bond.
So what did you learn about yourself when you're thinking about your what and then your why?
Yeah, I learned that I am really direct. Well, I was confirmed that I'm really direct. And that is how I like to give respect. I also learned that I expect others to be on time, but I don't expect myself to be on time, which is kind of funny, but it's true. But I think a lot of why you are the way you are. I mean, some you're just born the way you are to some degree, but it's a lot your nurture. And most people's stories were, I was raised in this upbringing, my family was strict, or my family had this expectation. And so just kind of uncovering, it's like a self-discovery experience. I am the way I am because this is what I was always taught. And then maybe thinking about, is that true? Like, is that right? Is that who I want to be? Just thinking a little bit more. Super helpful.
That's so great because you actually experience exactly what we want people to experience. Because with the seven forms of respect, it's actually just practicing curiosity. And so we boil practicing curiosity down to three elements. The first is increasing self-awareness. The second is building relationships, and the third is communicating clearly. And so with that first one, it's getting curious about yourself because so many people actually don't ask themselves why.
Yeah, definitely.
And then to ask other people why, and then also to let them know your why, like to
Yeah.
let them be curious about you as well.
And it kind of just opens up the dialogue, right? And if you're having a hard time, if you've taken this course and let's say I really care about someone being on time and they're perpetually late to my meeting, we've already gone through this framework together and it's kind of set an opener for me to be able to have that conversation. Hey, remember when we did the seven forms of respect? Well, it's really important to me about this. What can we do? Kind of, and you gave a framework in the course as well about how to deal with confrontation if you're having a hard time, if you think someone is not giving you the respect the way that you want it. So that framework is really helpful too.
And that framework is what we are actually going to be doing at 5 o'clock today. And also that framework, it's called CAFA, is free. We have a free crash course on that too. So for those of you who want to try that, you can learn that on your own. And so and just Lizzie, you brought up, hey, you like to you want to get a punctuality, but not necessarily give it, and that's one of the dimensions actually of the seven forms of respect. We think of respect as dynamic, as relative, as subjective, as contradictory, and it's based on these three dimensions. The first being hierarchy, the second, as in like the way that you treat people could depend on that power dynamics in a relationship. The second is the way that you like to give versus get respect. And the third is actually really asking yourself this question of what matters to you. So with that, I think we are ready to take some audience questions. And I see the first one. I'll actually just read it from Jackie. Okay, great. Thank you. And so Jackie from Seattle. While it's a job seekers market, I think Lizzie, this question's for you, really. While it's a job seekers market, any tips for seasoned professionals who still face ageism barriers?
I think that you want to find a company. Thank you for your question. That does not have ageism because you don't want to work for that kind of person anyway. So I think just be comfortable in who you are and what you have to offer and your skills. I have a video that I can send you about how to use your LinkedIn to find a job, but maybe put a little bit of a bio about your background and your history. And I think you have so much knowledge and so much to offer. So just know that and have that confidence in yourself and don't give up. And if a company doesn't really see that in you, then that's not a place that you want to be anyways.
Lizzie, are there, while I wait for, please send in more questions, and I'm just going to ask a follow-up question while we wait for more questions from the audience here.
Yeah.
So how is there a way to kind of tell if you think that a company is going to have ageism?
I think that there are DEI questions that we would ask as an employer to make sure somebody is really open-minded, but there's definitely questions online that you can ask. I don't think you can ask, do you have ageism or anything,
Right.
are you racist? You're not going to ask something so direct, but maybe, tell me about how your company, tell me about what diversity means to your company is a good one, because what does diversity mean, right? It could mean so many different things, but tell me how you make sure that all your employees feel that the environment is inclusive. Tell me about your inclusive environment. How do you accommodate people that are not like everybody else, right? That's really an important thought, especially in our world today. So I think there are some questions that you could ask to identify, and it's important. Well, if that is your value, if that's something that you really value, then it's important to find that out.
And have you, what do you do when you're, and I'm just asking another question as we wait to see if there are other questions that people want to type into the chat. What do you do when in your interview with a company that you realize like, oh, I think that they are going to have some, that they're going to want people who are younger or something like that, or they're going to want certain like demographics. Like, what do you do then?
I would like to know their why. Why do you want the person that you want? And I always like to ask, can you send me some examples of who you think the right fit is? And then I
Mm,
can kind of see. And I might offer my input. Maybe it might be nice to try people from this underrepresented group, or have you considered this diversity tool? Happy to connect you with somebody. My old boss would always say, when you dance with a gorilla, you go where the gorilla goes, which is a funny saying, but it means that what the company wants is what the company wants. So
mhm,
I'm happy to interject. And, if you're, for instance, 20 white guys,
mhm,
it's going to be really hard for you to hire diverse candidates because they're not going to want to work with you. So it
mhm,
becomes kind of a perpetuating issue. And so I'll have that conversation. Have you thought about how you will bring diverse people into your workforce? But all I can do is kind of ask and bring it up. And if they don't want to, then that's not something that they value.
mhm, mhm. And here is a question from, okay, what has surprised you as you've seen groups internalize and operationalize 7 forms of respect? Something that surprised me is it's actually more of when I get to see the CEO surprised by what they. So one of the things that we do when we work with teams is we have people guess what we have people guess what everyone else thinks each other's forms of respect are. And so it would basically, so for Lizzie, it would be your team. Hey, we do a survey of everyone else, and it's just like, guess what Lizzie's forms of respect are. And it's really interesting to then see the CEO or to see actually just team members go like, oh, I didn't know this is how I showed up. I didn't know that this is what people thought that I wanted. And then to have that discussion about it. So, because it's one thing I think um, to say, oh, this is what I want. And it's another thing to basically see the survey results from what everyone else thinks. And so I'm going to give you an example. We had one person who said punctuality was super important to him, and yet no, in terms of getting punctuality was super important to him, and yet no one guessed that for him. And what was happening was everyone was like, oh, he would tell people, oh, it's not a big deal that you're late. And over time, people just thought it wasn't a big deal to be late to his meetings, and yet inside he was simmering. So that's something that it seeing people be surprised has been great. I think another thing is just how hard it can be for people to narrow down on what their forms of respect are, because sometimes there's this perfectionist mentality of like, we want to be all 7, we should be all 7, and to kind of coach people through, no, which are the ones that you actually care about, and it's okay that you're not that you're going to prioritize these 3. So another question. why are some forms of respect easier to give than to receive? It seems like it's more important innately to want to meet people where they are. For example, punctuality is important to someone, so I might try to be punctual specifically for them, than trying to adjust the way one receives how to, than trying to adjust the way one receives how to, or receives how people give respect. So why are some people,
Maybe to give other people their respect versus to change how you want to get respect.
yeah, I mean, so one example is we see a lot of people. It's easier. It can be easier to give compliments than to get compliments for some people. Like for some people, getting compliments feels really, um, really embarrassing, and yet they like to give it. And so, and actually, I would turn that question back on the person. It's like, well, why is that? And for them to go back into their history and into their personal experiences and to try to understand, like, why do I feel that way? Another one is people like to give surprises, but they don't like to get surprises. And I've heard people say, oh, it's because I don't like the surprises people give me, but I give really good surprises. So, um, great question. Is there any one thing that stands out that you've noticed that's changed on the way you communicate or even notice in your level of self-awareness? So Lizzie, I'm going to have you answer that one.
Yeah, I think in my job, I interact with all kinds of people from all cultures, all ages, all everything, all over the world. And it's really easy to think, hey, this person's kind of rude. But once you've taken the 7 forms of respect, I think it really opens your eyes to say, hey, this person is this way, maybe because of the way they were raised, maybe, because of something in their background is why they are this way. And really to remember that most people are not trying to be rude. I mean, the vast majority are not. It's just their communication style. So I think once you have that in the back of your mind and you get a little curious, why is this person this way? And then maybe you ask them, it changes the whole conversation because you don't feel upset anymore. And you don't have any animosity. You just have curiosity. Why are you this way? And then how can I work with you, right? Instead of this is not what I like. So it just makes everybody a little bit more open-minded, I think.
And Lizzie, the fact that it's just, yes, it's about asking the question, because I think sometimes people take from it like, oh, I shouldn't be, yeah, people have different things and I shouldn't ask though. It's like, no, but then you miss this opportunity to learn about one another. And so it's noticing like that, okay, they're doing something else. I think that's kind of rude, but let me pause and ask is just, that's where you get to know people.
But maybe they think it's rude to ask, which then you have
Yeah,
to
I know.
overcome
And this
entirely.
and then sometimes that's where it's like having the language of like, hey, I think that we will have different ideas of what respect looks like. And I notice that you do this. And I want to understand why. And this is, and also kind of also volunteering, hey, this is why I care about it.
Yeah. Just explaining your why is huge. And I feel like it makes you so much closer with the person. And when you use your framework, it's not, I feel like the person can't really be upset that you're asking because you're being sincere, right? Here's why I want to know this. And I am trying to work through this with you. So just coming from a better place.
Yeah. So I'm just going to end with talking. I don't see any, well, maybe there'll be another question that comes in. I'm just going to share a little bit about the flexibility, actually, and this is what we call the rubber band rule. And this actually reflects how people actually give respect, that we are able to stretch and that we are able to accommodate other people and kind of intuitively go like, oh, I think that this person wants this. The thing with the rubber band, though, is that if we do things that are uncomfortable, if we're accommodating and stretching too much to make other people happy when it's actually something that we don't like to do, then we can actually eventually snap and break. And it's actually really important to understand what are our internal breaking points. And I think a lot of times people don't articulate that. Instead, they are just like, that culture was toxic, or I didn't like working there. And what doesn't happen is, hey, was there just a mismatch in how people like to behave and how I like to behave? And so, they can go do their thing and I'm going to go do my thing, and we can just, it's not that one is right or one is wrong, unless it's something truly egregious. It's just different. And how do I find out about this earlier before I actually end up snapping? So with that, I don't see any other questions. And so I am just going to, Lizzie, thank you so much for participating in our very first LinkedIn Live. I always really enjoy chatting with you and learning from you. And I just want to again talk about we just launched our course. So there are details that are going to be in the chat window. Again, please sign up for the class, the live crash course today. And we will actually do silent reflection and then role playing. So people will actually practice talking about how to practice having that difficult conversation about sharing, hey, I feel uncomfortable with this, and let me tell you why. And so you'll get to actually practice that. And also we have a giveaway. And so the giveaway is this. So for the first 2 people today who post tomorrow with the recording, because tomorrow we're gonna post the recording of this, and just share on LinkedIn, hey, their takeaways, what you thought, and tag CuriosityBased, and we're going to give you 3 months access to this course that's valued at $150. And Lizzie, I think you have an ask as well.
Yeah, Here's Waldo is always hiring, and we have a recruiter in training program. So we're really always interested in finding people who like to talk to people, care about other people, have a high level of emotional intelligence, care for others, time management, attention to detail. But many of our employees come from totally different industries, and we'll help train you on how to become a recruiter. And so I think, it's in the chat. We have a link to our jobs page. And if you're interested in chatting, feel free to send me a note. Please send me a personal note on LinkedIn so I'll know that you found me here. But send me a note, and I'm happy to talk to you about becoming a recruiter. It's not always something that you don't go to school for. It's not something that you always are really aware of. So if you have any curiosity about what it's like, or if you are personally interested or might know someone, please reach out.
Thank you, Lizzie. I think one of the things that you and I also have in common is that we're open to people from untraditional backgrounds. It's like you don't have to be trained in this. It's just like that desire to learn.
The desire to learn and want to grow and being a genuine person. So if you meet that criteria, please reach out.
Well, thank you so much, Lizzie, for this. And thank you, audience, for participating today. And I hope to get to see you at 5 o'clock so I can see your face. All right. Thank you. Bye.